Hello, art parents. Here we are in November already. This month we're going to talk about Andy Warhol, who is such a fun character, honestly, to talk about with the elementary school kids, because his art is so vivid and so fun. And now it doesn't really seem like anything crazy to us because it's been so imitated since he did it. But it really was groundbreaking and actually, honestly, scandalous to the art world. In the 60s and even 70s when Andy Warhol was kind of in his heyday. So kind of fun to get into. He's a really colorful character, really colorful. There's a lot of his work is not really elementary school appropriate, especially like the films and stuff, but it's still, there's plenty to show the kids and they'll love it, and it's still kind of fun. He is interesting to look up on your own. He's the kind of artist that, I don't know, some of us, maybe some people just love. He's not one of my favorites, but I do respect him. I see what he did. So there you go. Here's Andy Warhol. Here he is with one of his crazy wigs. This is probably taken in the 80s. You can see his work in the background. He was really famous for those wigs. He was really eccentric. You can tell from the biography, he grew up very lower class. His parents were working. His dad was a coal miner and died, when he was really young. He grew up really idolizing Hollywood and the movie stars and that, really glamorous image, and really wanted to have that for himself. And physically, he kind of struggled that way. He started balding when he was in his 20s. His skin was always kind of mottled, and he was always really self-conscious about that. And so he kind of, he wore a lot of makeup when he was younger, but then he also I don't know, he surrounded himself with beautiful people, and he tried to keep that image in his lifestyle. It was kind of interesting to read about the factory, his studio was called The Factory in New York, and because he was so broad in the types of media that he used, there was a lot of interesting stuff going on, and he loved to have stars and actors and models around all the time. And of course, this is the 60s and 70s, so there was plenty of drugs and partying going on as well. But just kind of an interesting guy. He loved to have all these beautiful people around him and vying for his attention. He kind of encouraged that and would play favorites and had his favorites, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know. He's interesting to learn about in and of himself, just as adults. So let's. You've got the biography, of course. His childhood really played a big role in who he became as an artist. Just being, his dad passing away and being very close to his mom as a child, and then also being sick. He had this disease that drug on, but then also became a hypochondriac. So he was just a sickly kid. You can kind of imagine, probably not super popular at school. He mentions that he was bullied and picked on at school, and was often bedridden. And he surrounded his bed with all these pictures of movie stars and just loved this. He's growing up in that golden age of Hollywood. Loved that image, and you can see how that just translated through his life into his work. So in the 1950s, he started work as an illustrator and was super successful. And I totally neglected to grab some of his illustrations, but I will get some tomorrow. So hopefully you're not teaching tomorrow morning. I didn't see anybody signed up on the cart, but I will have illustration work there for you to see. I love his shoe illustrations. They're fantastic. They're really fun and beautiful. And then he also did a ton of work for RCA. Almost all of the records produced through the 50s and 60s by RCA were his work or one other artist. They had a similar style. They worked together. But it's a very distinct style, and that is Andy Warhol's. And then he moved on to his fine art. These are the Campbell soup cans that were shown in his first gallery showing. And he's been coy. He definitely was one to tell the media whatever he felt like telling them at the time. So he's mentioned that he did this because he ate Campbell soup growing up as a kid every day, and as an adult he ate it a lot. So there are many accounts of him saying he loves Campbell soup so much, and that was a big part of his childhood. And then there are also a handful of accounts saying he detests Campbell soup because he ate it all growing up. I don't know. That's kind of the fun of art, is that you get to decide. But this is, I mean, these Campbell soup cans, this is an image that even the kids will have seen. We've all seen these cans, right? And it's part of what made it so popular is that it was drawn into art. That's kind of the fun thing about pop culture, is they took news and advertisements and images from everyday life and combined those with their art to make something really unique. And like I say now, it doesn't really seem that groundbreaking because it's been so widely embraced and so popular. But at the time, you can imagine in the art world, this was kind of crazy. This really shook things up. It was kind of scandalous. So here are some of the Coke cans. He did several series with Coke bottles and Coke cans. And I love his quote about Coke. This really does endear Andy Warhol to me a bit. And honestly, he kind of needs it in my mind. He's never really been one of my favorites. But that's probably because just it's hard to separate that crazy persona from his art. But really, you look at this and you can see, there's genius there. So that quote is, "What is great about this country is that America started the tradition where the richest consumers buy essentially the same thing as the poorest. You can be watching TV and see Coca-Cola, and you know that the president drinks Coca-Cola, Liz Taylor drinks Coca-Cola, and just think, you can drink Coca-Cola too. A Coke is a Coke, and no amount of money can get you a better Coke than the one the bum on the corner is drinking. All the Cokes are the same, and all the Cokes are good. Liz Taylor knows it, the president knows it, the bum knows it, and you know it." I love that. Don't you love that? I mean, that is kind of one of the things that makes our country great. So as he progressed in his career, he moved from hand-drawn images to photographs that then he manipulated with the silk screening. And here's Elvis Presley. You can see, like, the movie stars. Oh my goodness, so many. And his work is so prolific. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces. But also one of the most expensive, this painting, no, it's the car crash, and I don't have that. His paintings have sold for some of the highest amounts at auction. So, just really amazing. This is done on a silver background, and I'm sure it looks amazing in person. Those metallics really make a big difference in person, but don't translate very well in photographs. Here's a Marilyn Monroe. He did a lot of Marilyns. He really liked Marilyn. And then also fun stuff like the zebra. I mean, just go ahead and just talk to the kids. I really want you to talk to them about, ask them, what do you think? Is this good? Is it not good? Does this count as art, or does it not? Because he silk screened it and then colored it in. Is that like the same thing as a coloring book? Does that count? It's kind of fun to just let them talk and figure it out and kind of stretch their ideas of what art is. And it's kind of fun with the modern and contemporary art. That's really what happens in a lot of cases. It's easy to look at like a Turner landscape, like we talked about last year, and say, this is a beautiful sweeping landscape, and it's technically detailed, and it looks like what it should look like, and that is art. But, how about pictures of Coke bottles? Is that art? What do you think? It's kind of fun to just have the kids, by letting them dialogue about it, it has, it gives them the chance to kind of think through it and maybe change their perceptions a little bit, which is fun. Okay, so in '68, Andy Warhol was shot by one of the actresses that hung out in the factory. She wanted more screen time, and he wasn't a favorite, and also had mental disease. So he was shot, and he almost died. And I'm sure in that, a lot of things that I noticed when I was looking at biographies was that his hypochondria really played a role in him always being sickly, and he wouldn't take care of things the way he should. So his sicknesses, his illnesses would drag out, and I'm sure that was an aspect there. But his work also became a lot more quiet after that, and a lot more commercial. He definitely, that was probably the most controversial thing about Andy Warhol, is that he owned that commercialism. He wanted to make money, and he was happy to make money, and he sought after rich clients and did a lot of like Saudi sheiks and Hollywood actors and rich people. In the 80s, anybody who was anybody had the 4 Andy Warhol colored portraits of themselves hanging in their very expensive living room. So that's kind of what he did later in life. He also, though, worked in, and I think this is great to talk about with the kids, he worked in a lot of different media. So it wasn't just the screen printing, even though that's what he's the most famous for, is the screen printing or the silk screening and the painting. He was a sculptor. He did, a lot of hand drawing and regular, what you think of as more, what you think of when you think of paintings. Photography, sculpture, film. He did a ton of films, and I looked for one that might be good to show, and I just couldn't find anything that, I don't know, it was the 70s. You guys will get it. I just couldn't find anything that seemed really appropriate to try and show to the kids. Plus adding a different media in, just, add something extra to work with in the classroom, which is sometimes a pain. But then he also did music, and he was a really influential person in bringing punk rock to the U.S. He managed a band called the Velvet Underground, which was a big punk rock band. He was really influential in that. I mean, he had his hands in everything. Crazy talented and genius guy. Crazy talented and genius guy. Okay, so for our Andy Warhol project this month, we are going to make like a little print series of our own. And I went ahead and just found some kind of basic images. I did, cans, and I thought it would be fun to let the kids like design their own. Instead of making Coke cans, they can draw it in and make, Porter's Pop or whatever. And then color that in and go through. I had them bulk cut at the print center, so like some of the ones at the end, I didn't give them enough border around the image because I wanted to make them as big as I could. So if it's cut off, if the kids want to use it and they're fine with it, great. If not, if we just get low and we're down to the cut off ones, will you just shoot me an email and I'll go print out some more. So here you can see I've just taken each of my images and tried to color them in kind of a different way. And I've mixed in, on the cart there will be colored pencils, crayons, and markers, so you can kind of mix up the media and get different feel, and encourage them to really like mix it up. Don't hesitate to, play around and get crazy with it. Be a Warhol. And then the one thing I forgot to do before I glued everything down is, the other option is to also add in maybe some cuts. So I'm just going to cut this one in not completely straight lines here. I don't know why I really felt like I needed to demo this. I'm sure you can figure it out. But then I'll just glue it down with the glue stick and tell them to go ahead and, lay it out before they glue it down to make sure they get it kind of even and, where it should be. But let me show you how this will turn out. And, and definitely encourage them to not stress out. This is just a fun project. Last month with the self-portraits, it may have gotten a little bit intense. I know I got to do it with the 6th graders, and especially since we know we want to use those for the art night, I feel like, maybe there was a little bit of pressure there to get it to be, an amazing work of art, and that's wonderful. I mean, that's certainly not a bad thing. But, this is just have fun and don't stress out, and nice. It'll be time-wise, it seems like we always run out of time too. So, time-wise, you're going to be probably just fine here, unless you get someone who's just super detail-oriented. But so, kind of cutting it up makes it a little bit interesting and different too. So yeah, just encourage the kids, cut it into puzzle pieces, cut it wavy, cut out the flower and put the background and pieces around. There are lots of different options. It's an easy project. It'll be an easy one to do, but it should be a fun one. And like I say, Andy Warhol, what a crazy character. And I think it's fun for the kids to see too, because as often happens with art and real life, things kind of mix and mingle and mirror each other, and advertising really embraced pop art and took that on, and now we have ads that are very artistic, and so this really doesn't seem that groundbreaking, but it's kind of fun for them to see, like, somebody came up with this And it was groundbreaking, and he had a lot of opposition throughout his career to get his pieces recognized. But then also it was in the time when media was more common and more prevalent, so it's also easier to get new ideas out there. And the 60s and 70s and 80s, even in a different way, were such a different, I mean, those decades really were like just turning points for our society. Things really changed, and it was kind of a time when, you know, it incubated and really encouraged like really different thinking and different growth. I don't know, maybe it was something about that generation. Definitely something that would be interesting to learn more about, but not necessary for today. So hope you enjoy it. Like I say, please let me know if there's anything I can do to help out or make things easier for you guys, or if you have any feedback at all. I'm so appreciative of it. So let me know. Thanks so much. We'll see ya.